Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Macabre, also known as Rumah Dara, an Indonesian horror film from 2009 that was directed by the Mo brothers. Now, while traveling on a dark road, a group of relatives and friends see a confused woman named Maya. She tells them she has been robbed and is unable to get home. Pitying her, they give her a ride to her house, where they meet her demented family of murderers. So this movie is a feature-length spin-off of Dara, which is a short film that was originally part of the anthology entitled Takut Faces of Fear from 2008. And I reviewed that anthology in my Asian horror playlist, as well as this film, but I wanted to, beef up my review for this October horror season for you. Now, I thought the short film in Takut Faces of Fear was pretty good, and probably the best of that anthology, which wasn't really that great overall, the anthology. So Dara was kind of a standout there. It had some good violence, direction was good, but I must say that this feature-length version, Macabre, is superior to the short film. Now, within the opening 5 or so minutes, I already felt at ease the first time I saw this film, with the lovely Julie Estelle in the lead role, gracing the screen. And even when she's in like a less impressive movie, like Kuntilanak 2, she still makes it more watchable than it would be otherwise. So her presence was welcome here. Now, I am happy to say, and proud to say, that I was already a fan of this actress before watching Macabre like 10 years ago, due to her Kuntilanak trilogy, which I originally saw on YouTube and may or may not still be on the website. The first film being the best, Kuntilanak from 2006. As a fan of her ghost films, I was in for a pretty shocking experience when watching Macabre, because her role here demands a much more physical and emotional performance. And she pulls it off very well, I think. This was kind of a logical stepping stone in her development as an action star. Because after Macabre, she did some other stuff, and then was in The Raid 2 as Hammer Girl, and then of course she did Headshot and The Night Comes For Us. So she's more well known now internationally as an action star, but back in the day when she started, she was kind of a scream queen, so to speak. So that was kind of an interesting career path, and Macabre is kind of like the link between those two. It kind of like bridges them. And I do think her performance in Macabre gets stronger as it progresses. You know, near the beginning, maybe a little bit off, I think, during that kitchen scene, dialogue scene. But as it progresses, she finds her footing, and this is a pretty good performance, especially near the end. Because at the end of the film, they kind of put her through the ringer. You could tell she's, it was a demanding role, let's put it that way. Arifin Putra is also in this. You will recognize him from The Raid 2. And he is freaking creepy in Macabre. He really sells like that quiet psycho character quite well in this. He's pretty scary in this one. And then we have Shareefa Daanish plays Dara herself. Again, she's kind of like the, the leader, so to speak, of this family of murderers. Again, she's really freaking creepy as well in this film. So between her and Arifin, you got some good villains in this. And she also played the same character in the related short film. But again, I think her performance in this was even better. She's allowed to do a little bit more within the context of the story. So again, the acting in this movie is pretty solid. The plot, it's pretty basic. You know, it follows a similar route taken by stuff like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Nothing really new here. But in this genre, it's the execution that counts. And this film has a healthy dose of gritty, nasty, bloody violence, and even a bit of suspense, and to keep you horror fans satisfied. It actually reminded me a bit of those French extremity films that came out in the 2000s. You know, it's not quite as insane as something like Inside or High Tension, but this film does hold its own in general. A few of the death scenes are certainly memorable, and will help Macabre kind of carve out its own little identity within this genre. And again, like I said, I really like the villains in this film. One major problem that I typically have with movies that showcase, loony, murderous family units, and there's quite a bit out there. A lot of times, especially the English language ones, they feel like they have to make these people obnoxious. Just because you're a ruthless, like, evil family unit that likes to kill people doesn't necessarily mean that you have to constantly be yapping your mouths and acting like juvenile lunatics all the time. It's one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of Rob Zombie stuff. It's just like, his films are pretty good until the characters start opening their mouths, and then it just tanks, I much prefer the quieter, intelligent, menacing killers that kind of calculate and go about their business with like a twisted calmness. They'll be serving you, some tea and biscuits 1 minute, and then they'll be slicing you in half with a chainsaw the next. And in Macabre, that's exactly what we get here, and I very much appreciated that. It's almost like less is more when you're dealing with the dialogue of your villains. They're constantly yapping all the time. It just gets on my nerves, Pacing, very brisk in this film. After the brief setup, basically a non-stop mix of suspense and bloodshed. My main criticism of this film is a cliche that is present in most films of this kind, even a lot of the better ones. Questionable character decision-making. Now, to this film's credit, the script does find a logical way for our protagonists to be handicapped by the bad guys. And, their options are limited early on. It creates a realistic scenario pretty well. As the film moves along, though, the realism loosens up quite a bit. And it eventually, the sense of realism diminishes a little bit, because you're dealing with some outlandish elements and some really questionable decision-making by the characters. And I can't really get into the specifics without spoiling things, but a few of the decisions I think are pretty boneheaded. Some of the reaction times are maybe a little bit too long. I understand, if you're thrown in a life-or-death situation, you might hesitate, but almost sometimes I think they hesitate a bit too much in this. So there's a little bit of that here. That's kind of what makes the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is such a great film, because it kind of it avoids some of that stuff. It's just a fantastic movie. But this one, you're going to get some of that stuff, and you do get some of that in the French films as well from the 2000s. Those are really entertaining too. So you just be aware of that. If you can handle it, it doesn't bother you too much, you'll really like this film, because it's distracting a little bit, but not a lot. So Macabre is definitely worth seeking out. I mean, this is like one of the first Indonesian films horror films, that really kind of hit the international scene, on at least in terms of internet chatter, back in the late 2000s, early 2010s. And it's definitely one to check out. It's definitely, I strongly recommend this if you're in this type of film. You're into like those violent horror thrillers. Check this out. It's currently available on physical media. I personally have the Region 2 UK release in my collection. And as always, we'll see you next time.